I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
And I wasn't angry at one point. I was just like, he has this world that I don't know anything about. I don't know what affects him on a day-to-day basis.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is part 2 of an interview with Samantha and Dylan. Part 1 was mostly the lovely story of how these two met. And this episode focuses more on how they manage criticism, conflict, and the differing cultural views of their friends and family. If you haven't heard part 1, you might want to go back and listen for some context, but this discussion really does stand on its own. So with that, let's go back to the magical porch under the desert sky and join our interview with Samantha and Dylan.
Criticism is such a touchy thing. It's critical that you've got to communicate what you need and what you don't need, your boundaries and your requirements. You've got to communicate those things.
Yeah.
But, it's so easy. I know in my life when I'm upset with something, when something's hurt me, to communicate it in an inelegant way.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine you were new. The relationship was new, and there was a lot of happy hormones going on. So it was probably a lot easier to communicate elegantly than it would be, say, however many years later. I don't even know how long. How long have you guys been into this now?
3.
Yeah. Okay. So that's enough time for most of the happy hormones to go away. At least from what the neurologists say. So it was probably pretty easy to be elegant at that time. Are you still able to communicate issues like that in a way that doesn't upset the other person?
I think we've only gotten better at it, but the elegance is just a little morphed. I think on both ends, and also the reception of the criticism is. We're getting better at it.
Well, but you did so great that first time. So you.
And I wasn't angry at one point. I was just like, he has this world that I don't know anything about, and I don't know what affects him on a day-to-day basis. There's no way that I can be really angry about this until we crack it open. And we didn't crack it open for a while. And I don't think that we would have been able to unless there was some patience involved on my part. I don't know. And I think that now, as we tackle some of our issues, you present me with that exact same patience, even more so. I think you're very patient.
I mean, I try to be, but all the while I feel very impatient. But I remember then one of the last emails I got from you before you came back was as blunt as ever, and it just said, "Dear Marine boyfriend, do you want this or not?" And then I remember I responded with maybe a half a dozen words, if that, but pretty much just yes. Yes. And I'm like
that's classic.
What if
I missed the point?
Right? And it's God. And then looking back, everything in retrospect is just oh man, how was I so stupid or ignorant or whatever? Just what the
And why was I so committed to the idea? Because that was uncharacteristic for my behavior. You know, I would have usually just called it and been no.
Yeah, but something I'm forever grateful for is you're just blind faith and patience in me.
I mean, something was different about this. You asked your dad to move to the desert with you for a month so you could vet this fellow. Yes. I mean, that is really after he'd ignored you for however long in Italy.
Yeah.
By the way, what did your dad say about him?
He was also nervous about the Marine thing.
He also had some preconceived notions.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
he was like, "Really, a Marine?
Mhm.
You're not gonna start a life with a Marine." And so when he came out to the desert to meet Dylan, he was not psyched on the fact that I had fallen for this type of man.
It's so ironic, isn't it? It's just, it just slays me. I mean, you know, what's the? There's a scientific sociological term for the effect of knowing somebody from a different culture has you be less prejudiced to them.
Ooh.
It's the same thing with homosexuality and marriage equality. When people have personal interactions with people who are gay, then they tend to support same-sex marriages.
Sure.
Same thing with transgender issues.
Yes,
Same things
yes,
with
yes.
race, interracial relations, but we never talk about it in terms of, you know, your average kind of liberal, coastal, educated white person's perspective of the military, right?
It's a non-subject.
But it's the exact same prejudice.
It is.
It's the same mechanism operating.
Right. I mean,
so what happened? How did your dad? What happened?
I mean, he's just such a cool human because he was like, you see something in it, and that means I should too. And so he approached it all very kindly, warmly, took Dylan in, and like thought it was hilarious that he called him sir, and and it was pretty quick that you guys became friends, right?
I think so, yeah. It didn't take too many times. I feel like
you kind of melted his heart.
I came down the first evening and at the Landers house, came down and we had dinner together, and there was a time where it was just him and I at the table for a minute and just talking and yeah, I feel like I broke down the wall. I mean, pretty quickly, but I was nervous. I was super nervous.
Of course you were.
Yeah.
You know, like the kind where you're in a room, but you're not sure how to move.
Oh,
you just
want
to keep your hands in your pockets. It's just like,
oh man,
you know. But
well, it sounds like Dad was too.
Yeah, he was. He definitely was. Yeah. And the few weeks being at that house in Landers, they were hard. It was. I mean, there were some other things that happened where the lifestyle differences became apparent. There were a few times where Dylan would take me out with a couple other Marines, and it was very obvious that the Marines kind of won over me.
Well, what do you mean?
Like, okay, so in the Marine Corps, you know, the brotherhood kind of comes first before the family life, you know, and that's kind of that's an essential part of a lot of Marines' lives and work, and I didn't know any of that, and so in these situations where we'd be out together, there was one point where we went to Paffine Harriet's, and then we went home, and it was just this like kind of debaucherous evening, but I needed to go home. I was ready, and you were like, no, I need to stay here with my guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I was so confused by that because I was just like, but I need help getting home, you know? Like, I want you to protect me, but you were wanting to protect this other Marine.
Yeah, okay, I remember that night.
Yeah. And that was such foreign behavior to me, and I think that there were just a couple other instances of that in different lights, of, you know, friends coming over to the Landers house and me just being really unsure about the role that I was playing, and how it was going to look if I started a life with this person.
Now, but I wonder about that. I don't know much about Marine culture either, but isn't chivalry a thing too?
Yeah, but that's kind of second.
Ooh,
really?
Well, actually, no.
Not so much.
There's like an ugly face behind chivalry, but yeah, the it's like you take care of the dude next to you first.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like always, you just always like the norm or like the expectation is that there's somebody watching your back and you're watching somebody else's back.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of the way that you go. You don't ever separate from it, because then you're out there alone. And, you know, when you're alone, you can become victim to any number of things. And so, yeah, and I was still heavy into it. Heavy into it, you know. And
I don't want to go too far into this, but that sounds different than the image that's portrayed in the media of the Marine Corps.
Right. Was it Eleanor Roosevelt
I don't know.
who said that famous quote about Marines?
Yes.
Being super gentlemen, right?
No, it was more so. She
I
said
twisted
exactly.
it
She's
for
like,
my own.
yeah, the Marines. She's like, there's no. What is it? The filthiest minds, cleanest bodies, lowest morals, and highest morale.
Oh,
Like, as a group of people.
okay. Delete.
Huh. Yeah, that doesn't apply.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I was making up my own quotes to suit my own needs.
As we all do.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but, yeah. And I wonder how a Marine hearing this would respond to.
I'm curious too. I get pretty idealist about things, I think. And when it's like when things in the organization don't go the way that they're supposed to go, or the expectations aren't met, I kind of get disgruntled.
Yeah.
I can get super disgruntled. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll meet a lot of Marines who, and I would say the force as a whole is, you're kind of like, just like, it's beat into your head. You're like, sir, ma'am, open and hold the door, or like, escort the old woman across the crosswalk or whatever, and just kind of be like polite, always in public. But as soon as you throw like alcohol into the mix, and you like, and people pursue quote unquote romantic interests, it like goes out the window. And I guess it's all related to alcohol, but you get a bunch of testosterone fueled dudes slurping down alcohol, all that kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's better that they have that foundation though built in before drinking the alcohol than if they don't.
Yeah.
It'll probably get a lot worse. Well, okay, yeah, that was that wasn't the main thing I wanted to focus on. This is all part of the story about your father.
Yes.
And eventually he warmed.
He did.
And
yeah, it became a really beautiful familial thing happening out there in the middle of nowhere landers.
What did he say to you at the end of the month?
He was psyched. He loved Dylan, and he learned a lot about the Marine Corps. And I think that, I mean, we went shooting together. He was so excited about that. He learned so much from Dylan in regards to like gun safety and
inside every liberal man is a gun fanatic. I swear, it's every time.
That is a serious thing, actually. I've had so many friends come out and visit us, and everyone, as liberal as can be, they want to get some gun action in a very safe way. But my dad was
safety first.
My dad was part of that, and it was, when he left, he was really excited that I was going to stay with.
Oh, wait. So that's what happened?
That's what happened.
Oh, you skipped it. So you decided to stay.
We're on this trajectory. Yeah, I decided to stay. So my dad had enough desert time, and he brought his Airstream out. So he floated away on his Airstream. And one of the guys that Dylan works with had a room that he offered up to me. And so I lived in his friend's room, because Dylan was in the barracks at this point still.
Yeah, he was on base.
And so I took the few things that I had with me and moved into this house and stayed here until I went to Italy. again.
So now culture shock works in the opposite direction.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we were
Yes.
talking a bit about that with the Marines first issue. So did you address the Marines first issue? And if so, how long did it take you? And how did you understand this culture here?
So before I signed up to stay, I think we had many conversations in Landers with my dad around and with him not around, just talking about how I was having a hard time committing to being with somebody who had this whole fraternal organization that came first, no matter what, and some parts of that were cool to me, and some parts were just not okay. You have to be an individual at some point, and so I kind of said I can't continue a relationship with and eventually possibly marry somebody who's in the Marine Corps. It would be
who's in the Marine Corps, period, or who subscribes to this way of being in the Marine, or is there such a thing as?
Well, at that point, I didn't know there was a difference.
Yeah,
I think.
Right.
But I mean, yes, I should have said somebody who prescribes to this way of being.
That would have okay.
And we just had these honest conversations about how he felt about it, and how it could possibly change for him, how it might not be able to change, and just the tone of the conversation that we had gave me enough hope and faith. He was never just straight up okay, I'm sorry, that's not going to be this way, or yes, I can do this for you. It was just the way that we communicated. It made me really happy, and it was enough for me to stay and see how we tackled this problem together.
Yeah, that's great. It wasn't resolved, but the communication style was such that you were willing to keep working with it.
Sure.
I don't think there could have been any quick resolution, because it is just a clash of lifestyle, clash of norm, or routine that each respective party was used to.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just kept talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and in 3 months and then I started staying when she was staying in the spare room in my friend's house. I started staying there, and then and then she went back to Italy, and I just started renting this room so that she could come back, so that she would have a place to come back to. And I tried my best to stick to my promise that I wouldn't let my inefficiency at communication, electronically be such a thing. And I felt like I poured myself into it, and after she came back from that time, I think I really started to change for me in the way that I viewed what I was doing, where I was at in my career, and what I really wanted, what really made me happy, and what I thought was worth pursuing, and not by just a condition of comfort or normalcy, but something that was worth the pursuit and the uncertainty involved, and the excitement, really, and just exploring this new thing that felt like it had no limit, that there was no containing it.
Like your career did.
Yeah, my career was very
narrowly defined.
Yes, narrowly defined. That's a great way.
Well, when did you decide to get married?
So I went to Italy another time. We did it back and forth. I came back to the desert and to live in this house, and it was just conversations. It was
just keep talking.
Yeah,
keep talking
I guess that's the theme of our relationship thus far. Is just there is no there's no like finality, if there's an issue, it's not like this is the answer. It's just these like kind of wonderment, open-ended questions. And so while I was in Italy, we talked about what it would be like if we got married, and what it might look like, and the bad parts of what I would bring to it and what he would bring to it, and the things that we'd have to work on. And we talked a lot about what could be bad and scary. And so when I got back, we started mixing some logistics into it, where we were like, well, if we want to get our own place, I didn't have any income at the time because I was experimenting, making art with a new project, and logistically it would make a lot of sense for us to get married. And so that became part of the conversation. And that seems scary to think about now, but it was after all of these other conversations about.
Yeah, then talking about it then made so much sense in regards to like the reasons why we want to get married between us, like what it would mean to us respectively and what it meant to us together.
Mm-hmm.
But then also to have this like logistical monetary piece,
Mm-hmm.
because through the Marine Corps you get married, you opt to live off base, and they give you a stipend for housing, and it's like that opened up like this whole new possibility of us being able to then get our own place.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it was kind of an experiment.
It
Almost,
was absolutely
like where it was like, well, we've only like lived in these very temporary arrangements thus far. The room that we were renting was like tiny, and like the bed pretty much took up the whole room, and then before that, like crashed in Landers on the weekends with this house that you rented with your dad.
right. So it was just all these temporary experiences, and it was getting to a point where like if we don't separate ourselves from all of these other worlds soon, it's going to be really hard to know how our relationship can move forward. And at that point, the way to do it was to get married and make sure that we had this extra income. And yeah, it was very strange. I remember reaching out to a couple of my best friends, just being like, am I crazy? Can I get married? Is this okay? Because I felt it so hard, but at the same time, I really didn't understand myself getting married. I hadn't envisioned that, and
likewise.
And
Really?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it was happening, and the conversations that we had surrounding it were so great, and it made me excited to start that type of life with this person.
Well, I was asking that question still within the context of the merging of cultures.
Sure.
Specifically because I know that there's a military family community also,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And that's yet a third cultural construct that you two,
Right.
neither one of you probably had any, you, Dylan, a little bit more experience with, but
Just exposure to.
exposure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to put it.
Oh.
So, how did that start to play out?
But that, I guess we didn't prescribe to it at all between you and I, but like the way it is, it's extremely like 1950s nuclear family, the man gets the paycheck and, the wife, they just like continually make children and live out this nuclear family existence. Where like you go to church on Sunday and eat fried chicken, green beans, and mashed potatoes for dinner every night.
Every Wednesday, and then
Yeah.
pizza on Fridays.
Pizza
Yeah,
on Fridays,
and so
stay up late and watch a movie.
I started to get access to these worlds, and they terrified me, but they also terrified Dylan. So we were in it together at a certain point and I think this is like where some of those culture clashes started to make sense to me, where we would approach a situation and I would be kind of freaked out by one of these things, and Dylan would be just as freaked out, and just as intimidated to get to that point in his life, you know. And so there was some camaraderie there.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, as far as me thinking about being married, that was my idea of like what a marriage was, or you know what I mean? And it's just like, I was like, you know, that's...
Well, there's this phenomenon that I see all the time when couples get married, that they each unconsciously start forcing themselves into these roles that they had believed but didn't consciously know that they believed marriage was supposed to be about. And that ends up creating a lot of conflict because it's not what they were talking about verbally when they were engaged and in that phase. And suddenly they start behaving in this particular way, and it's shocking. So I can imagine that would be very extreme in your case, but you're kind of saying it didn't really happen.
No, I don't think we started. I mean, I remember at first, even just when we were just living together at first, like trying to figure out the rules that we would play. There were a couple points of friction where I remember being like leaving work before we were married, leaving work and like, you know, coming back to where we were staying and just like trying to communicate with you like ahead of it, like, what do you want to do for dinner? And I remember one time in particular, I was like, you know, should I grab something or like what? Like I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like I'm coming home. Do I bring some food home? Is it because there's not really food there for us? Are we going to make something? I had no clue. And I tried to communicate that via text, which I'm still not very good at, but, and there was kind of like this like mini freak out, it felt like, where it was like, what? No, this is too much. Like I'm not like the stay-at-home wife, you know, like
I said that?
Frying the chicken. You didn't say that verbatim, but that was like the mood or the feeling associated with your response, which
okay.
I don't remember exactly.
I think I'm recalling some of this where, I mean, the dinner thing is funny, but I also, there was a little bit of confusion where, I mean, we were living with somebody who had a different way of treating relationships, and I do have this kind of aversion to like having dinner ready and cleaning at home. Like I'm like, no, I'm working really hard at home too. My grandma gives me a hard time for this all the time. Yeah, she's so really on Dylan's side,
but there's not. She just like she fabricates the sides. You know,
she wants me to have dinner on the table for my Marine husband. Yes,
and the house is like spotless,
right?
You know?
and so many times that we've tried to have some Marine wives over.
Yeah, it just
I get caught up in these conversations because they're the same way. You know, they play a very like quote unquote good wife role. You know, where it's like I had this one woman ask me like why I wasn't wrapping our rugs in plastic coverings to keep them safe because she heard Dylan exclaiming about how he loved our rugs and telling stories about them, and she was like, you know, you really should be protecting them for him. You should put them in a plastic covering, and so it was just a lot. It was a lot of that, you know, and I think whatever time you're referring to, I was just kind of like, listen, I'm not this woman. Okay,
that was like when we like very first like moved into this like this living arrangement, you know.
Yeah.
What? So how have you worked that? How have you worked that out?
Very naturally. It's like it was a non-issue after a couple of like maybe awkward times.
Yeah, definitely.
Now it's we both have.
You have the rhythm of your family, and it's not a problem,
right?
And do you feel pressure from the outside?
No. That I almost just let it lead through. I'm like that. It doesn't mess with me. There's a lot. I mean, over these last couple of years, really, I felt like a growing distance between myself and the people that I work with and the institution that I'm a part of. You know, and their influence doesn't affect me at all. And so like the ideas of the way things are supposed to be, it's just not for me. It's like everything we do is incredibly cooperative. Like,
Yeah. Well, our relationship since that point has turned into, it's just us here.
yeah,
You know, like we really don't really have that many friends here anymore. And we've had a couple of people who've moved away. We have 2 people here who we're close with, but we rarely see them. They're out of town all the time. And so it's very much just Dylan and I, and we really rely on each other completely, entirely,
yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, I could just imagine somebody who thinks that's a bad thing saying, wow, she really isolated him from his community, and somebody from the other side saying, wow, he really isolated her from her community.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And do you two feel that, or
I guess,
do you feel...
I would say that kind of like figuratively, that's what our house on these 5 acres represents, this island that we've kind of built for ourselves, where we're in this like transitive zone between me getting out of there and her having relocated from the Bay Area to like where we're going next. You know, it's almost like this like limbo space that we do. I mean, we are each other's leaning posts, and that by itself has created very complex particular set of issues that I think of late we've just been trying to navigate, and it all being like new territory, and just and feeling it out, and how we've got some big expectations for this move coming up, but at the same time there's a lot of apprehension involved because we don't want to take this like weird island waiting space that we're kind of in right now with us there.
Right. So some of what you're talking about is, it's really hard for me as a maker to be isolated. I get all of my energy and excitement from people and from watching how people work together. I've always been really collaborative, and so being here is really difficult because I don't have any access to any other worlds, and I don't get to have lunch with a really smart friend and hatch out some crazy ideas I'm having, you know.
So New York will be good for you, which I don't think we were talking about that on tape, and we just have a few more minutes left, so that's perfect. Say what you're planning to do next.
Okay, so the end of this year is the end of 8 years active duty in the Marine Corps. Still in the process of getting into Columbia University by way of upstate, where we'll be back with Dave, back with Samantha's dad, for a couple months until I start school. School starts, get an apartment in Manhattan, and dive in and just and live the life. I'm so excited to be a student. I'm so excited to like create a new community to be a part of, and I am equally, if not more, excited for Samantha to be able to grab hold of another community and really develop and explore everything that you need to explore.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, good luck to both of you. It's an amazing story how you came together and navigated all the challenges incumbent in merging your two cultures, which, you know, I don't think people give enough credence to how really, really distinct the two worlds that you two came from are.
They are quite distinct. Also, it all felt very natural, though. So I don't even.
I mean, yeah. To this point, nothing's been forced,
Mm-mm.
and there's only been a few awkward moments.
Just a couple.
You know, nothing unmanageable.
All right, this or that. You know how to play? I'm going to say this or that and point to one of you, and you'll tell me which you prefer, and then we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Peanut butter and honey or peanut butter and jelly?
Peanut butter and honey.
Good call.
Peanut butter and jelly, because I'm just familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever put cinnamon on your peanut butter and honey?
Sometimes.
That's a good way to go. Just saying, Dylan, if you ever get a chance.
Yeah.
I've been
peanut butter and honey.
Sometimes-
cinnamon.
I've been experimenting
Well,
with cinnamon in the recipes lately.
There's another option, which we do, is peanut butter and sriracha.
Oh, peanut butter and pickles.
And peanut butter and pickles.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Peanut butter and sriracha is like, sriracha's my jelly.
That's going in the Together Guide cookbook.
Good. Yes.
Oh, cool.
That's good. Which we don't have yet. Just saying.
Okay.
We're gonna have to.
I'm
It's the
excited.
start.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Okay. Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or fly?
Fly.
Yeah.
Fly.
Yeah. Why?
Water freaks
You
me
can
out.
already breathe underwater. It's an air tank.
Well, I mean, you can already fly. It's a
Right.
airplane /
I
squirrel suit.
suppose,
you
huh?
know?
Shit.
I would feel freer in the air than in
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Okay. Batman or Superman?
Oh, indifferent.
you gotta
I'm very
you gotta pick
indifferent. Okay, Batman.
Batman.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's a man of his wits and brawn and pure determination.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
There's a comic book nerd coming out.
I like it. I like it.
That's the answer people give when they also people love that he's so dark.
Oh yeah, that was going to
Yeah,
be my
absolutely.
my response. Yeah,
Absolutely.
the darkness.
Mhm.
Okay. An enlightenment or $1 billion?
Oh man, part of me immediately I gravitate towards enlightenment, but then I'm like, $1 billion would be really nice. Enlightenment, I suppose.
Yeah, I choose
Figure it. Yeah,
enlightenment as well.
I can figure it out otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And if you had to die in the next 5 minutes or live forever, infinity, which would it be?
5 minutes.
Oh, forever.
Even without her?
I mean, it's like
I mean, I had to throw that in.
Yeah,
I know.
it's tricky.
that's great, but I'm like I'm inclined to be like feel it, learn the feeling.
Mm,
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little emo here, but
I like it.
carry the pain, you know. It's like there's no like resolution to it. You just make room for it. You know, more weight that you carry through infinity.
Through infinity.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Awesome.
Until the sun explodes.
Right, exactly. And beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing about infinity after all.
Right. Oh man.
Oh, and I just signed up for it.
It's fun. I like it.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
having me out here.
Thank you. I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
you're here.
Well, that's it for part 2 of our interview with Samantha and Dylan, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Samantha, you can find her website at samstrand.com. That's SAMSTRAND.com. You can find her recent work there and the collaboration that she references on our first half of our show. And if you liked what you heard on our show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a big difference when you do that. Please also consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, and every penny really helps. You can find our campaign at patreon.com/together. That's patreon.com/together. We really appreciate the support. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out via one of our platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both at together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.